Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sarah Bishop will take roll.
That is a problem.
Mayor Aziz.
Here.
Councilor Camp.
Here.
Councilor Furlow.
Here.
Committee Member Kirkpatrick.
Here.
Councilor Griswold.
Here.
Councilor Fisher.
Here.
Committee Member Garner.
Here.
Committee Member Olfers.
Here.
Councilor Boland.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Committee Member Jestrin.
Here.
Committee Member Jeffers.
Here.
Thank you. And before we go on to the election of the Budget Committee, I've had a couple people mention to me, and I wanted to mention, I would like to discuss time for next year as we go forward. Would anybody be interested in doing this as an earlier meeting, maybe a noon meeting?
Yeah.
And starting earlier?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Next year, we will do a noon meeting then, and I think, why don't we do lunch? And,
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
well, yeah, well,
Okay.
yeah,
Clear your calendar, Adam.
yeah,
A Thursday would probably be better than any other
okay.
for me.
Well,
If that works for you guys, yeah.
But I think that would be a little bit better for everybody, in that way, if it goes longer, then it can go into the evening, afternoon. So, thank you, everybody. Okay, next up, do I have any nominations for the Budget Committee Chair for tonight?
I nominate KJ Opers.
KJ Elfers has been nominated.
I'll second that. Oh, my, KJ.
Doesn't know what to do.
It's been moved and seconded for KJ Elfers to be the Budget Committee Chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
One no. KJ Elfers is the Budget Committee Chair. At this point, we need to do the committee secretary, but I'll turn that over to you, KJ. You just follow right down the agenda.
And keep it moving.
I don't think I can tell you what I'm thinking right now. Okay, Election and Budget Committee Secretary. So I guess I would ask for nominations for Secretary. Any nominations?
I nominate Floyd.
I'll second that. Yes.
Do anything.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay?
Nay. Wait, I can't vote in two ways, sorry. Rescind my vote.
Okay, next.
Good thing
one.
he's not secretary.
Is it okay if Sarah takes notes for you?
Yes, please.
Thanks, Dean. Okay, next is the approval of the fiscal year 15 budget minutes. All those in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
I had a correction.
Yes,
I had
sir.
a correction. On the roll call, Todd Gestrin was marked as absent, and then in the next sentence down, he seconded a motion. So I believe maybe, did you come in late, do you remember, Todd? I don't remember, but you were here, so, okay. So I just want to make sure that the minutes reflect that, on that correction.
But good job from seconding from Springfield. He's a talented man.
He's on Skype.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, are there any other corrections on the minutes from last year? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the budget minutes?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Next is presentation of the FY16 budget by City Manager Gary Marks and Finance Director Dean Baugh.
All right. Just give me one moment to get queued up here.
Yeah, oh yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's good. It's a good change, huh?
A massive stiff neck, I'm pretty sure it's from my cancer.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight and spending your evening with us. I know there are probably other things that you would like to do on a nice spring evening like this, but being involved in your community and helping with the budget are very important things for our community, so thank you very much. First thing I wanted to do is, first, I hope that you all received a copy of the new budget format that I want to use in its totality for next year. If you have some feedback on that, I'd like to hear that first.
Yeah, I think it was great here.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
Now without a magnifying glass.
Okay.
So I think it's the way to go.
It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nice.
I
Much
shed a
simpler.
tear thinking that this would be the document that we would review for the budget. Yeah.
Shed a tear.
Amen.
The only thing I would like to see, I really like the percentage changes, so I like, that
We
way
can
I'm
do
doing
that.
math in my head, but I'd like to see that. But
Yeah, we can do that. In fact, there are some elements of the existing budget that aren't in here that I want to incorporate in with the larger fonts and so forth. So even this will be more informative than it is at this point. I wanted to get something out to you this year, though, that you could have a sense of the direction I'd like to go, and I wanted to have your feedback before I go through the process with the staff to redo our format. It will be a fairly large undertaking for us to make that change. So if it's something that you all support, it sounds like
Yes, the format is
do,
excellent.
I think in the interest of transparency and ease of understanding our financial documents, it's a good move for us. So
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
thank you for your input on that.
Great work.
Tonight I have a PowerPoint to go through with you, much like I did last year, which I hope when I'm done will have hit all of the high points of the budget. Some things to keep in mind tonight is that since our last meeting, the City Council has adopted financial policies. Where that probably will come up tonight is with the fund balance, and I'll inform you about that now. We have a goal ultimately of a fund balance that is composed of a contingency reserve equal to 2% of expenditures, and then a reserve, what do you call that?
We had a working reserve and then a contingency reserve.
Okay, working reserve is really our contingency, the 2%, and then the contingency reserve, which is our reserve for the rainy day, for cash flow needs throughout the year, 17%. So ultimately, we're on path to get to 19%. You'll see tonight that since the budget reductions of two winters ago, our situation has improved dramatically. So much so that I'm going to present to you tonight the budget, which has us doing sort of a strategic retreat so that we can balance our fund balance growth with our service needs in the general fund. We took some pretty heavy hits in the general fund when we made those cuts 2 winters ago, and now is the time to readjust that, get us on a glide path towards our 19%. I have some information to share with you about that tonight. So without further ado, let's get into the good stuff. So the budget tonight is our proposed budget. And in fact, we're going to be looking at 2 budgets tonight because there's actually 2 organizations that you'll be reviewing tonight. The first one is the City of Lebanon budget, of course, and I'll be presenting to you a budget overview and then some specific review of the general fund. That's where our difficulty was in the past, and so I want to spend some time showing you where we've come from since that time and where I believe the budget we've proposed will begin to take us. And then the other budget we'll review tonight is the Urban Renewal Agency budget, which the significant change you'll see in that is there's a lot more capital improvement projects proposed for this coming year. So much more action on the ground, and that is reflected in the document that you were provided with last week. So we'll start with the city budget, and it, of course, covers a fiscal year that begins on July 1 of this year and ends June 30 of next year. And it provides all of our budget authority for services and all of our projects that we anticipate doing during the fiscal year. I say anticipate because there are some things that come up Sometimes we get grants that we don't know of at this point in time, and so there are times we go back and the city council has to do small amendments, but everything that we know about our financial direction at this point is incorporated into the document we're reviewing tonight. The budget contains 6 funds, and within those 6 funds, there are 61 segregated self-balancing divisions. That's down from last year. One of my priorities with our budget in the whole streamlining and simplification is to reduce the number of divisions. We actually reduced 8 divisions this year and added 2. So, 8 steps forward and 2 back. But the 2 we added were important ones that will assist us in what we need to do. So, but we're headed in the right direction, and I anticipate next year probably will be a significant reduction from the 61. We'll be consolidating some things where it makes sense, and that will ease in understanding of what we're doing. So the budget totals just over $39 million in spending authority, and that reflects a $2.5 million decrease as compared to the current fiscal year. Before you get excited about that, most of that decrease has to do with a reduction in transfers from one fund to another, which means that we're double counting some money. So we're actually not seeing a decrease, we're actually seeing an increase, and some of my slides to come will explain that more fully. So this is just, on the surface, if you take out those internal transfers, that's really what it looks like. We were at 31.7 with this current budget we're operating on. Next year's budget, we're looking at closer to 34.5. So it breaks up in those 6 funds I talked about. Where's the pointer? We got the general fund at 11 million, the debt service at 3, enterprise fund, which are our utilities, which is our water, wastewater, and storm drainage utilities, which are accounted for separately from other areas of the budget. Our special revenue fund, which contains a number of items, which is like our our equipment replacements in the capital. And then the capital fund, and then our trust and agency fund, which is a very small fund that's there for statutory purposes, where we just have to segregate bail payments related to our court activity. So that brings us to a $39 million budget. So if we look at how those relate to each other, 28% of everything we do is our general fund. Enterprise funds are 37%, and capital projects 15%. I'm impressed with the 15%. A lot of cities in Oregon would be very envious of an ability to have that kind of money going into capital. Shoot, I think some of them would be happy to have 5. A lot of cities in this state just operate and resort to deferred maintenance and such, and that's not a good situation, but we're very fortunate that we've been able to structure ourselves financially that we have this 15%. And that doesn't really tell all the story, because our urban renewal funds this year are heavy laden with capital improvement projects, which are not part of what we're reviewing here. So we're putting a lot into the renewal of our community and our infrastructure, and we can get into some of those discussions as we go along, and I'll be pointing out some of those projects.
Can I ask, do you know off the top of your head roughly what our capital was last year? Dean?
I think Dean can get you that number, and we'll circle back in just a moment, Adam.
I'm just looking for rough anyway.
You bet.
We have 15%.
No, I think we can help you out with that. So I always like to be very clear, because the internal transfers can muddy the water and make people believe things about the budget that just aren't true. So if you take out the money, and when I say transfers muddy the water, it's because we double count the money. You count the money as it comes into one fund from some external source. You count that as a revenue. Then you expend it to another fund, it receipts it in as revenue coming in, and then you spend it again. So you've spent it twice, and it drives up revenue twice. So to adjust that so you have a real idea of our external spending to the outside world, it's this $34.5 million figure. So as a comparison to last year, you see that, in fact, this really illustrates my point. Last year, the budget, and now my laser doesn't want to work. Okay. Last year, $41.6 million was our appropriated budget. By the time you took out the transfers, we were down to 31.7. So notice, though, that if you didn't know about the transfers, you'd think we went down this year at 39 million. However, our transfers have been reduced, and that was on purpose. Dean and I have wanted to get that number down, try to minimize the double counting. We're down to 4.6 this year. Hopefully, we're going to, as we consolidate divisions within funds, that number will be driven down farther. In fact, I'm confident it will be. But you can see that where you thought we had a reduction before, now really the effective budget or our external spend is actually an increase of 8.5%. Now that 8.5%, that's driven by our reserves are up. In fact, they're up dramatically. We've seen a 26% increase in our reserves throughout the entire budget over this past year. And so, in the totality of that 8.5 number, our reserves play a big part in that. And we're also seeing a 7% increase in our capital spending. So again, those are positive things for our community.
Can I ask you, on those numbers, the effective budget, I'm seeing can you help me understand the difference between the effective budget that you just put up, those two, versus what we have here on, the one that I have says for this upcoming year, it'll be 39,331.
Yeah, there's some unappropriated revenue and spending reflected in the number you're seeing there on the budget message.
Okay.
For the purposes of what I presented tonight, I wanted to bring in actually the appropriated budget.
Okay.
There's an amount in the in the debt service. We have to keep some reserves in debt service that we have to set aside and not even appropriate.
Okay.
So if you take that out, the appropriate, before people's eyes gloss over, appropriated funds only means that it's money we have the legal authority to spend.
Right.
And how do we get that legal authority? We get it from you and the city council. Whatever you approve as the budget is what's appropriated. It doesn't mean that all the cash in the budget is going to be spent. In fact, there's some, like with what we have reserves for some of our debt, which is required by our debt agreements with the lenders. We have to set that money aside, and we don't appropriate it. We don't even ask you for the legal authority. So that's the difference in the numbers there.
Okay, so that extra $5 million is unappropriated?
Well, I think you may be looking at the transfers in there too.
Well, this one, the one I'm looking at, says the city budget is 30. Okay, yeah, that's where the difference is. Got
Yeah,
it.
I think you're looking at the transfers there.
Yeah.
But there's, yeah, go ahead.
Could you characterize, just in summary, that $5 million reduction in the transfers, kind of highlight that, or are you going to cover that later? What is that?
I think Dean can cover that in more specificity than I could. Yeah.
Thank you.
He gets to dance with these numbers every day. Not that I don't, but not to the level he does. Okay, so again, graphically, that's what that looks like after we take out our transfers, 8.5% increase for some of the reasons I listed before. So let's go on to the general fund now. In the general fund, we have 13 departments or divisions, and they are these: administration, human resources, legislative, which is the city council, legal services, community development, engineering, parks, finance, the library, the court, police, and our senior services and non-departmental, where our contingencies are kept, and some of the spending that relates to all of the services in the general fund are placed there in non-departmental. So Our total external appropriated general fund budget, or that's our spending authority for this year, $10,120,000. And that provides for all of those 13 divisions. This fund represents essentially a 4% add in FTE employee count, so 4 more people employed through the general fund. I'll remind you, we reduced city staff by about 11 people. It was 10 point something, but about 11 people in the cutbacks 2 winters ago. And so throughout the entire budget, general fund and other funds, this year we're going up a little over 5. So we're gaining back about half of what we cut back, but 4 of that's in the general fund. And then there's over $600,000 that we transfer out for capital replacement and those sorts of, the PERS bond fund and so forth, that we set aside money for our future capital needs. So just to give you an idea, when you take our fund balance and our annual revenues and add them all together, that's kind of what we look like over the past few years. With our estimate there in the middle, I'll tell you that my experience with our staff at this point is that I've come to understand that they're very, very conservative in their revenue forecast. When you see the estimated column in the budget, they're very careful not to exaggerate what the level of spending they think they're going to have. In fact, they go long and they come in a lot less. So, and we saw that a lot right after the cutbacks. They cut back so much in those last 5 months of that fiscal year that we ended up, and you'll see the fund balance information here soon. It really changed the direction of the city and where we are, our position right now. So kudos to them for that. They really, people talk about holding the line. They really did.
Yeah.
We've loosened up this past year some, but the progress continues. So we want to look at the proportionality of our revenues to each other. Of course, our taxes and assessment in the general fund account for about 2/5 or 39%, with the second largest item being our franchise fees and other items bringing up the rear. I don't tend to talk about the internal transfers because those are double counted monies. So, got that number again. You've seen that. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll go back. Actually, this is our fund requirements, which balances with our revenues. So this is all of our appropriations, or the money we have authority to spend, plus our contingencies added together. And if those numbers look familiar, it's because they balance with the fund balance and revenue numbers I previously showed you. We're required to have a balanced budget.
Can I ask, in looking at this before, I think we've already gone past the place. It looks like the estimated revenue, the proposed estimated revenue for this year is, I'm looking on page 9 of the packet that you gave me, up towards the top. From last year was 9 million, the resources revenue, 9,268,168, and then the proposed here is 9,883,460. Is that revenue just coming to the general fund? We're not talking about total revenue in the city?
Talking about general fund revenue, yes.
Okay. And part of that increase in general fund revenue is from the fact that we have such a large amount of contingency reserves that you guys did such a great job holding the line.
Yeah, in fact, some of that number too, Adam, are the transfers in. So that's an all-inclusive number.
Okay, and so I had a question. I remember we discussed, and maybe this will be for Dean or for you later. It doesn't have to be now, but just, do you know what percentage we're estimating of an increase in overall city revenue to work with? Because I remember this was kind of why we ran into the problems that we did, the previous time. And then last year you talked about that, picking a more conservative number. Do you know, I remember I think it was like 3% that we picked, that you had picked last year.
Yes, we can get you that number. I don't have it off the top of my head. The focus or the issue we've had in recent years has been the general fund. And I'm going to get into some of that with the fund balance and all here in just a moment. If your question isn't answered after all of this, then either Dean or I will address it.
Okay.
But to answer your question about capital, last year, we had a budget of 9.8 million. This year, this is city, not urban renewal. This year, for the budget, we're proposing 10.5, 10.5. So up from 9.8 to 10.5. What's this? Okay, revenue overall throughout the budget is up 5.94.
Percent.
Does not include URBs.
Yeah,
Okay.
percent for
Does
the
not
city
include what?
budget.
URBs.
Right, the city budget is up, but I'm asking about the estimated increase in city revenue.
That is.
It's
That is.
5 point, almost 6.
You can find.
You know what I think you're getting at is the tax revenue, because that's kind of where we got in trouble a couple of years ago.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah, it's not the overall number I think you're after. I think you're after, that last year, I think there was discussion that the estimate for the property tax was higher than really was the reality of the situation, and that we were going to be more conservative, and we were this year. I don't know, Dean, if you can get me the number.
So if you want just taxes in the general fund, they're about 6.95%
Increase.
increase.
So I remember last year, our discussion, we had talked about that, if I remember correctly, and I was looking through the minutes, that you were thinking last fiscal year that
That's deceptive.
that a 3% increase was sort of what you were thinking, and then it was bumped up.
I put a 2% increase is what I
Yeah,
calculated.
let me explain that.
Yeah,
We've-
thank you, sorry.
We've collected more this year by maybe 3% more than we thought.
Okay.
And so we've added to it. And so that's where that all comes in. It's not 6% more than what we're actually going to collect.
Okay.
It's 6% more than what we
Than we
budgeted
estimated.
last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've had a better performance. We're adding 2% on that.
Yeah.
I believe it's very responsible
Okay.
how we put this together, which is different than last year. Last year, we actually were going up 6% more than our actual experience.
Right, okay, that's what I was after. I just want to make sure that because the entire budget will be based on our estimates of what we think our revenue will be, right? So I want to make sure that that number is realistic and conservative.
I
for
think
that.
we're in good shape.
Okay.
Okay, so we want to look at how the funds share the money in the general fund. Of course, the largest one are the police at 45%, and you can see all the rest of those numbers. I won't go through all of them, but police are by far the largest portion of our general fund. So we look at our revenues versus expenditures. If this chart went out farther in the past, you would see, I wish try there, it's working again. You would see more situations where expenditures exceeded revenue. And you'll see in the last 2 years after, this is where the brakes were kind of slammed on, so to speak, and we ended up spending less than we had brought in. And then this current year we're in, we're projecting that we're going to spend less than we bring in. And we've done such a good job with our fund balance, I'm going to show you that in a minute. I'm prescribing a rebalancing of our revenue and fund balance needs against our service needs with the plan that the financial policies require that shows us getting to our 19% threshold level. So, and I want to talk a little bit about fund balances and maybe what they mean and how we should look at them. There's no universally accepted standard. There's no law that says your fund balance needs to be X, Y, or Z. The general fund balance, why is it there? It serves two primary purposes. One is to provide cash during those months without significant income. For example, through the 12-month fiscal year, there's 2 months there where we get property tax revenues in large numbers. The rest of the months we usually get a little bit, but we have 2 big payoff months. In between, the general fund still has to float. And so there are several months where we spend more than we bring in, because there's a couple months where we bring in way more than we spend. So you got to have that fund balance to get you from point A to point B to your next large property tax payment. And then the other purpose is to provide for that safety net against unexpected revenue declines, which is what happened a couple years ago that put us in the situation to do cutbacks.
The working contingency that you were talking about, is that the point where we're actually spending more than we're collecting?
No, the working contingency is a 2% amount that during the year of our unanticipated budget needs, we can go to the city council and ask for those funds to be appropriated wherever they're needed and then used in that way.
Oh, okay.
The 17% would be the amount that we're not going to touch unless there's some sort of an emergency, something catastrophic like we saw 2 years ago.
Okay.
Okay, so the goal should be to maintain a fund balance that assures that we have adequate funds while also not excessively stockpiling the public's money. If we don't implement the budget that Dean and I have proposed and the city staff has proposed, I think we're on the way to stockpiling the public's money because we're exceeding the expectations or the projections of where we thought we'd be with the reductions a couple years ago. And so we need to get that back in balance.
Can I just ask philosophically on that exact point? So the thought is that we don't stockpile the money because the money that's being collected as revenue, we want it to be used for something positive for the citizenry. But we're also not at that 19% yet, right? So why wouldn't we, flatline instead of taking more from the general fund? Why wouldn't we, maybe?
Because we need to restore some of the services that we've cut back on.
It's maybe a little too lean right now, and so we have to kind of bulk it back up so that we're actually, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people were hanging on by their fingertips, and that's not sustainable. So we're adding a little more money.
No, it's not sustainable. We are not on a sustainable budget right now. We have the means now. That's the good news. We can do this. We just need a strategic rebalancing between fund balance and service levels.
Okay.
And I'm almost there to show you. Okay, so there's an organization called the Governmental Finance Officers Association, and back in 2002, they came and weighed in on this whole fund balance business, and they said that for the unreserved fund balance, which is that amount that we set aside for emergencies, that in a general fund, it should be assessed on your own specific circumstances. Different governments have different types of revenue sources that can be more volatile or more secure. So the more important statement is this one, where it says basically that they recommend no less than 5 to 15% of the regular general fund operating revenue, or no less than 1 to 2 months of regular general fund operating expenditures. If we had proceeded forward without the budget cuts, I know this now from forensically going back and looking at the numbers, we would have been, at the end of that year that we made the cutbacks, we'd done nothing, we would have been at 1%. We're sitting much, much better now. In fact, we're within the minimums of GFOA now. And this is what it looks like. If we had not done the cutbacks for fiscal 14, this was where the panic came in. This number you see here, 899, would have been about 100,000. So there's 800,000 of this that is the direct result of the budget program that was put in place to reverse the direction of the city's general fund. So I'm anticipating that at the close of this year, we're going to be at almost $1.2 million, and I'll tell you that I believe this number to be conservative, to the tune of at minimum $100,000. I believe we're going to be better than what this number reflects. Dean thought we were going to be a little bit better. Again, he was conservative there, so he put in $1.2 million here for where we begin next year, and this next year too, I believe that we're going to be about $100,000 better. I think by the end of this next year, we're going to be more at 966 rather than that 766. But again, we're being conservative and not wanting to overblow what our condition is. So just a little history here and forward direction with our fund balance plan. This is where we were in fiscal 12, where the drop-off began, and we started to drop off, and we would have been, right in this area, we would have been down around 1% or so. And you see that rather than being at 1%, we ended up at 13.3. This was the budget, which really didn't turn out to be true because we did better, much better than we thought. We're going to end this year at 17% while we're starving off our services. We can't afford to do that anymore, folks. The good news is we've got the revenue streams coming in. They're strong now. The economy has improved. We can build our fund balance back and also provide the services to our community, but do it in a little more balanced way than we've been doing. So at the end of this next year, we're going to be sitting at 10%. I really believe that's going to be more like 12.5. The good news is that's far better than the 1% that we could have been back here if we sat on our hands. So, and we're well within GFOA guidelines at 10%. And so then we need to get to 19% at 12.5. We're going to be here. I think we're going to be here back here. But anyway, I think we're going to do much better than this plan shows, but I don't want to overestimate. We really don't know really what the future years hold. But I believe at a minimum we can make about 2% progress a year and get to our 19% by fiscal 20.
And Dean, you're using straight line projections on property tax for that growth?
Yeah, I used a 2% assessed value growth this year. I've done that the last couple of years.
Yeah, but I mean, in projecting those fund balances in the out years, are you using a level playing field with the property tax?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and it's all it is an estimate. I believe I will be vindicated in saying that we're going to outperform this.
Nice.
But we need to have this in place as part of our new financial policies. So, going on to the Urban Renewal Agency budget, again, it covers the same fiscal year, provides all the budget authority for our projects and activities. There are 3 segregated self-balancing departments in this budget. It totals $6.2 million in appropriations, and that's a decrease of $130,000, which again, when you take out the whole transfer question, you're going to see that we're really seeing an increase. So here we are. The 3 different divisions are the Northwest URD, Cheadle Lake, and the North Gateway. These are the amounts appropriated in each of those funds or divisions, totaling the $6.2 million. If you take out the transfers, what we really have here in spending authority to the outside world is $4.7 million. Just to see the proportionality, Northwest is by far our largest URD. Comparing this to the current year with the projected year, we were at 6.3 in appropriated budget, with our transfers being much higher. Again, this is an intentional effort from this year to this new one to reduce how much money we're throwing around between funds because it tends to muddy the waters. So we had an effective budget last year of 3.9. Effective budget in the proposed before you of 4.7. And in that number, a lot of that is capital spending. We have the Oak Street project this year where we're going to go in and we're going to strategically cut out different sections of Oak Street down to the base, rebuild it. We're going to be rebuilding curb and ramps for ADA and driveway entries, that sort of thing. There's going to be a rehabilitation of the Oak Street Bridge with its footings and so forth. That's all coming out of the Northwest URD. Northwest URD also will be spending money on our new water plant design and preparation with the new water intake at the river, which will be a great investment for our future and a move for independence. You know what I'm talking about there. There's the Cheetah Lake URD, which we're going to be looking at paying off the McKinney apartment debt that we have there. We had an agreement with the McKinney apartment development to entice them to build at that location as a payback for the capital investment they put in to the public infrastructure. We're going to pay that off this coming year because the next year we have a very exciting project which is in our master plan, our transportation master plan, to extend Airport Road where it terminates now there by Safeway, and it will take a turn to the south and come in and intersect with Russell right there by Porter Park. So right now, we're talking with landowners about property acquisition, and we have a willing landowner for the great mass of that property. But to be able to bond that project for the following year, we want to clear the decks in this URD so we have that other debt paid off. So that's factored into the number you see here. Also in the Northwest Gateway, we have reimbursements to the Samaritan group that are going to be up because of all the development you see going on at the Samaritan campus. With all of the new development there, there's some public infrastructure that's being installed that we are then going to participate in paying back to Samaritan. So that's reflected also in that number. So that's what's driving this 21% increase. A lot of exciting advancements for the community. So, and that's what that looks like after you take out the transfers. So when we look at both of the budgets together for what you're approving for tonight, there's that $39 million number we talked about for the city budget, 6.2 for the Urban Renewal Agency, for a total of 45 and some change. We take out our transfers for, combined transfers for both, we're down to an effective overall budgets, plural, of $39.25 million. And so just the relationship there, 86% of all that we're doing tonight has to do with the city budget, 14% with the urban renewal. And as I mentioned before, we had that 15% amount here in the city budget for capital. Most of this 14 is, or a lot of it's going into capital. So you see, we're putting a lot of money comparatively to other communities. We're putting a lot of money into our infrastructure, which bodes well for our future, and perhaps is why we're seeing some of the growth that we're seeing, because this isn't the first year we've been doing this. It's magnified this year, but we've had the resources through the URD in particular to address some of our most basic infrastructure needs that have advanced our economic development. And that continues and is enhanced this year. So just want to extend my many thanks to the staff, to Dean. Putting together the budget is a Herculean project every year, and couldn't do it without a team doing it. And so I'm just very grateful to the department directors, to their staffs, to Dean and his staff. Everybody has to pull together to make this thing happen, so you have that document in front of you. So just many thanks to all of them. And that is the end of our other questions you'd like addressed. I'll do my best, or I will turn the mic over to Dean if I need to.
So question, Gary. When you talk about spending more of our ending balance, is some of that spending into these contingency and reserve funds, or is that not? That's all just extra services? I hate to oversimplify it, but I was curious if some of that spending is to make those contingency and reserve funds.
Maybe this will help. In fiscal 14, which was the year where we had the problem.
You can just call it the year from here on out.
Yeah, the year.
That which must not be named.
Yes.
What happened is our revenues underperformed by about $400,000. Staff responded with, between staff reductions and then reductions in materials and services, we ended up recouping or saving $814,000. So the net of that was about 411. This year, we're seeing revenues outperforming what our expectations were at about 267,000. We're on course for a very conservative savings of 133,000 on the expenditure side. I believe that's going to be higher, maybe by $100,000. So the net on that is another $400,000 advancement. So over those 2 years, rather than sinking down to a $100,000 fund balance, we added 800,000. That's why we're at that the 899 that you see in the budget right now. What we're recommending tonight is that we reverse that with this budget. This year, we'll end up spending about 400,000 more than we're going to bring in, but we're still going to be significantly higher within GFOA standards, and moving forward on a straight line projection, as Robert pointed out. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Am I accurate in saying that no, that spending doesn't increasing other fund balances?
We're not, no, we will,
Because I followed all what you said before,
Yeah.
earlier in the presentation.
the fund balance this coming year under this budget will decline.
Okay.
It won't decline, this is just me speaking, because I've had experience now with how conservative we are with some of our numbers. It's not going to decline to the level that this document, the budget document, says. I think we're going to be about 200,000 to the good. But yes, we are going to go down this
We're
year.
not saving anything, and part of this spending isn't populating a fund called savings account.
Can I say something?
No,
That's a general.
not this year, no. But in the last 2 years, we've added 800 grand to it, yeah.
Thank you.
Did you want to add something?
I want to say, we kind of are. If you look at our contingency number, our contingency at the end of last year was right about 500. At the end of this year, we are putting up to 766.
Yeah.
So our contingency number, which is what we've always looked at, the council's always said they want a 10% contingency. So we've kind of always looked at that number as what our savings is. It's almost doubled in this year's budget from last year.
So it's budgeted, and that's planned
Yeah,
to grow.
so what you're saying is, yes, our number we've got that Gary shows is our budget. Yes, 400,000 that is an increase into contingency.
Okay, good.
So, kind of, yeah, so it does, so it is good.
That's what I was trying to find
I
out.
thought that's what you were asking, but that's what it was, yeah.
It's a savings.
It's a savings.
Yes.
Other questions? If not, we'll be advancing to, we're still in this agenda item,
Yep.
and we'll be hearing from each of the department directors. I think Dean will be first,
First it's here, then we go to public hearing, then we go to the director.
and I'm going to go sit up in front.
Okay.
Can I ask, sorry, the 5.168 full-time equivalents that we're increasing, the FTEs that we're increasing in this proposed budget, I see that there's a increased personnel cost of about $1 million for those 5 full-time equivalents.
It's not for all those. The increased personnel cost, well,
Let you take this over.
so that was the fun part, now I get the boring number part. The increased personnel is not only for those 5, we also have in our union contracts, with the ASME contract, there's a 2.5% COLA included in that one. In the Teamsters contract, there's a 1.7% COLA. And then we match those with the part-times and the exempts also. So there's also some COLAs that are included in that for the rest of the employees.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there's increases in other payroll expenses.
Yeah, and and I'll get that here, our PERS costs went up, health insurance went up, so it's a little bit of all that added in.
Right.
So real quick, just an overview of the way this budget looks. I think I said this last year. If you want to look at the most important part of the budget, look at the budget summary. That whole section right before the general fund. It had, every question you guys were asking tonight, that's where I went and got the answers, because that totals everything up. Let me this page.
Page number?
Hold on, so I'm getting there.
I believe-
So it starts on page, well, it actually starts on page 1. That's the manager's message. And if you read that, that details, a lot of what Gary just said is explained in that message. You know, it goes through and explains some of the changes, the fund balance totals. A lot of that is laid out right here, so you can kind of go back and read that. So that manager's message is kind of an important thing to read if you want to read anything. And then the next, about 10 pages, it's total summary of the budget. Like I said, when you were asking about how much did our revenues go up, I jumped in here to page 8, and there's the general fund. At the top of page 8, okay, I'm in the other budget.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we're in this one now.
I'm in this budget. Sorry, just so everybody knows, I'm in this budget because this is the one that we're going to be approving tonight, or when we get done with the process. The other one is an example. It has just a copy of the general fund. So when we get all done, this is the one that we'll come back to.
Okay.
So at the top of page 8 shows the total of the general fund. It combines all the departments together and tells you, here's how much our taxes went up. I mean, you can look at the last 3 years of actuals, last year, this current year estimate, and what we're projecting. And then you can see the difference. Like I'm saying, in taxes, we're looking at a 6.95% change this year from last year's budget.
Right.
Like Gary said, that 3.8, we're coming in greater than that. So I'm only projecting a 2% change in the assessed value, but overall from last year's budget to this year, it's almost a 7% change in the revenue. So you can look at this thing, if you have a question about personnel cost and wherever, you can look here to see the changes. This will tell you the overall changes of everything. And if you want to go for the entire city budget, you can go back to page 10, and I've got total city budget, URD, and then total budget, with the URDs included. So you can see any change you want to see throughout the budget. So those are kind of, like I said, every question you ask, that's where I went and got the answers, because the changes from the last few years. You know, and you can kind of, some of these are the same graphs Gary showed you. You know, the changes, you know, how our revenues come from, our changes in the years. So I'm not going to hit those because those were all very well presented in what he did. But I always want to make sure we pointed out those pages because those are really important. Gary already spoke about the next thing on my topic. I'm looking at my notes, but a lot of what he just said is we've already covered it, so I'm just kind of try to slide by it. You know, the middle of the budget is all the detailed pages, which these guys will talk about when we get there. Somebody had a question about interfund transfers. What happened? So I'll hit that right now. If you go back to, whoops, it was in the enterprise funds. Oops, here we go. So on page, go back to page 70. And we'll talk about the interfund transfers, why they reduced like $6 million this year. Okay, so if you remember back in the past years, we had a fund called 430 Water, a fund called 430, which was the plant, 435 or whatever it was, CIP. These were all different funds. So in past years, all the money came into 430, the water. That's where when you pay for your water bill, it goes into 430. And then they would budget to move $5 million of that back to capital, $1 million back to the plant, and then another $1 million back to debt service. What we've done now is we've taken it, and this is the way a lot of places are done. We now have Fund 430 with Department 430, Department 433. We have this, you can still see the functions of all these, the plant, the debt service, capital, but it's all in one fund now.
Negating the need for transfer.
So yeah, I'm not transferring from 430 because it's already there. They all start with 430, 433, 430, 435, 430, and like that. So we've kind of rolled it into one fund. We did the same thing in the sewer fund. Instead of having 6 funds, we have one fund with a number of departments. Got rid of all the transfers. And we were able to do the same thing back in the Northwest URD. We had, I think, 2 funds back there, it's now one with the department.
That's good.
So we got rid of, I think we eliminated close to $6 million in transfers.
Nice.
So that was kind of nice. So that answered the question, is
Yes.
where they went. I think Gary wants to say something. I see the button.
No, I was going to say that really that's a precursor to what I think we're going to do next year.
more.
We're going to be doing more of the same thing in other areas of the budget.
Yes.
Streamlining it.
Pardon me?
Streamlining.
Streamlining, absolutely.
Streamlining, yes.
So when you get through with all that, what do you think the transfers will end up being? $500,000?
That's really an unknown at this point, Robert. It's going to be a lot less than what it is now. But I'd like to drive that number down as much as makes sense. Clearly, there are some areas where transfers are an assist to us. I think in the past, some of it hasn't been necessary, and that's why we're collapsing some of that down and streamlining. We'll get down to whatever that core level is. I really can't tell you what that is right now, but it's going to be significantly
We'll have to,
reduced from where we are even now, I think.
once we start playing with it some more. But these were the easy targets, to roll those that way. I say easy, the software program's going to be a pain, but. So now I just want to go over some of what we based the budget on. Property taxes, we looked at a 2% increase in values. Now that's on, I took what the county gave me last October and added 2%. This is where some of the conservative stuff comes in, because what the county didn't have in last year's number is this new hotel, and there's a number of things that aren't in last year's number. So those are going to come in on top of what I'm projecting. So
That's even better. So the 2%, if I remember, is a conservative estimate based on what we collected.
Right.
But we're only estimating that we'll collect that. If
Right.
nobody pays in the next couple of months, then our estimate will be off. But
Which is why I'm telling you that our balances are going to be higher than what we think, because we've been extremely conservative with 2%. I think we could have justified 3, 4, even 5%.
Probably.
But given our experience in the last couple of years, we didn't want to go there. So we're being extra conservative, expecting to come back to you with good news next year.
Okay.
And a lot of that is because there's been a lot of construction, whereas a lot of it out here is not taxable, because it's the college, the hospital. But a lot of that, those new apartments you see being built up there, the motel.
Doctor's offices.
Doctor's offices, all that will be taxable. So there is a lot of taxable, even though some of that's in the URD, we do have a number of apartment buildings that aren't in the URD that are being built out there. So there is a lot of taxable stuff going on, so that's going to help. Yeah, that's Northgate URD is going to be really, we'll be able to pay our bills off really easily in that one in the future, because there's a lot more taxes going to come in. One good thing is the percentage of defaults around here, we put a collection rate of 93%, and it usually comes in about 93 to 95% of taxes billed or taxes collected. It's really high. It's really, I mean, I can tell you in Alaska, I never had it that high. You know, it was about 90%. So it's, usually we get 93 to 95% here, which is really good. Compression, we're figuring it'll be about 100 to 150 this year again, because of the way things are. PERS rates overall went up about 3% this year. If you looked at what the court did the other day, in 2 more years, we're looking at another really big increase because of that, what the court did. So we can kind of expect that in 2 more years. Insurance, we estimated between 10 and 15% increase on all of them, and that actually came out to be pretty close with the way the rates were. Some of them came in lower. We did get some good news here, was it last week? Our mod rate on our workman's comp, we had a few bad years back there. Well, this year, finally the bad years dropped off. Our mod rate was, and what that means is they take our rate and they multiply it, kind of a penalty thing they put on there. Our mod rate was about 1.3, now we're back down below 1, which is a good spot to be. We got that letter about a week ago. So the rates I got in here for workman's comp are probably too high once we get our estimates in, because the mod rate went down, so that was nice. Like you said, in this budget, there's a 5.168% increase in personnel across all funds. And it's kind of evenly split. There's some in the police department, there's some in ASME unit, there's some exempts, and there's some part-times. We kind of hit, every unit got a little something, so it's spread out. One of the directions that we gave at the beginning, after Gary and I talked, was directors are supposed to keep their increases in materials and services to 3%. And if you look at their budgets, when they get up there, some of them didn't even use the whole 3%. It was nice. They did their budgets correctly. And you'll look, there's a couple of budgets that are over because of unusual things that happened. Most of them are under the 3% number, and these guys did a good job of keeping that down. We do have our 2% working contingency, and then our other contingency comes out to about 8.1%. So a total of 10.1 overall, kind of, with that. We talked about those. And as we go along, there is one number change we'd like to present, and it's on page 97. So when we do this, that's in the building fund. Line 61240 has a budget of $10,000. We'd like to change that number to 25, and then we're going to balance it by reducing the contingency at the bottom to 168,499. So when we make whenever we get to the end, there's a motion, we'd like to make sure it's amended to include that one change that we have.
What was that change again? Can you repeat that for me?
In
I see the line.
account number 61240, it's like the third one down there, 90, 5,000, 10,000.
It's about a middle of the page.
Yeah.
I see
And
where it's at there.
Look to the right, and you'll see a number that says 10,000.
We want to make that 25.
Okay.
And we're going to balance that out by changing the contingency in the bottom from 183 down to 168,499. And I believe that's the only number change that we have, that anybody said. So, if there's no questions, we'll move on to the next. I'll turn it back over.
This one right here?
Back to Mr. Chairman.
Back to Mr. Chairman.
No, actually, one for the directors.
Yeah,
No, not yet. I think it's public hearing next.
Okay. Okay, at this time, we'll open the public hearing to discuss the, I thought you said move on to this. The department directors?
This is just the public hearing for the state revenue sharing.
Yeah, that's what's on here.
Our staff presentations all together now. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay. We'll now open the public hearing to discuss possible uses of the state revenue sharing funds. Anybody that would like to have input, please come forward. Last call.
Seeing none.
Okay, at this time, I will close the public hearing, and we will open for public input on the city's proposed budget. Anybody that would like to come forward? Okay, we'll close the public input. And now we'll move on to the department director presentations. I'll move it right along. Do you have an order you want them to go, or?
I gave you your order.
Is it? Okay, this is it. So administration will be first.
They tell me that's me, so.
Oh, here we go.
We go to, I'll get you the page number here. I'll be presenting the administration and the human resources. So we go to page 25. The most significant changes in this division of the general fund is that one of the positions added back is my administrative assistant. So she is incorporated into this division, as well as last year we put in $50,000 for the community vision process. This year we're budgeting $40,000 for the strategic planning process we anticipate to take place next fiscal year. So those are the significant items of note. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those. Okay. Then if you go to page 27, which is Human Resources, this budget is really pretty much, I mean, a lot of it's status quo. If there are any questions you have, either I or other staff folks will help you out with that.
I just have a question about the
Yeah.
5,001 or 50,001, the salary jump there.
Dean, can you dissect that for me?
Only Debbie in that.
What's that?
I believe it's only Debbie in that department? Oh, yeah.
Well, there's a large jump there. What's causing the large jump?
Going from 47.9 to 62.9?
That's just 50,000.
Yeah, there was an adjustment made there.
Okay.
There was a now it's coming back to me, there was a reclassification of the position through LGPI, the Local Government Personnel Institute. Because of that reclassification, there was a change in the compensation level.
Okay. Significant.
So that reclassification means that she's doing more, doing different, or?
Yeah, over time, the job had evolved at a higher level, to a higher level of service, more expertise and specialization, more of a workload with all the human resource aspects of the organization. So it wasn't something we did internally. Our process is to send that to LGPI that specializes in personnel information like this. They are able to reclassify that against the market of what other city jobs are classified as. They took the responsibility level of the job we have as HR generalist, and they compared that to our market, which is other local governments, and determined that it was a different job than what maybe it was several years ago. Reclassified it, that put it in a different place on our pay scale, therefore the change.
I'd noticed that too, and I frankly couldn't believe that we were only at 47.9 for what we were getting away with that, so I was not
Yeah,
surprised by that at all.
There have been a few positions in the organization that because of the recession and so forth, they were allowed to drift, for lack of a better word, and they needed to be addressed. And so I've been trying to do that in some kind of a sensible way that doesn't overload us, but there are a few of those incremental changes in this budget.
So it's essentially an adjustment for average of comps and...
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So are you you anticipate something like a 3-year or 5-year review cycle to go through each of the departments and make sure that the classifications are adequately?
I think it's probably more like a 2-year, maybe 3 if necessary, but yeah, and there aren't a lot of positions like this, there's just a handful, and we've begun to address those this year significantly. So, yeah, I think in 3 years, we'll probably be done and up to where we need to be. Then, whatever review is needed on an annual basis, we'll do that, but I don't anticipate there's going to be much of that going forward after this.
So are we strategically going position by position and evaluating this with LGPI, or is that? I guess my question is why this position versus something else down the binder?
Well, there's a lot of history there, Jason. This was a position where I think institutionally we knew that the job had changed and we just had not addressed it. We let it go.
It's been a while.
Yes, it's been a while. And that's when I'm saying there's a handful of positions, that was done in. There's a couple that they had been reclassified, that information was set aside, and the individual was actually working at less than their pay range for the less than level that they were being held back in.
So previous administration had been aware of this and had just been kind of maybe not being caught up due to constraints?
Yes.
Okay.
We're trying to make it right. We're trying to do the right thing.
I understand completely.
Yeah.
Just trying to the first I've heard of it, and just trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Understand.
And there will be some probably encouragement from the bargaining units to do some of that also.
Well, actually, most of this is in the exempt category, because the unions were kept pretty much whole through the recession with their contracts. It was the exempt employees that
Locked out.
some of these issues were allowed to not be addressed. So. Any other questions on HR? And then there's the city attorney. Not a whole lot
Not a whole lot there.
new there.
She'll be at the kids' table at Thanksgiving, so what do I expect?
So if there are any questions there, I'll be happy to respond to those. Just for everyone's knowledge, Trey works with us on a contract for services for the city. He's actually a partner in the firm located behind City Hall, but that's a contractual basis. He's not really a city employee. So the numbers here reflect what we expect out of the contract for the coming year. Any other questions? Okay, that's all of administration.
Okay, community development, Walt?
Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. Name is Walt Wondolowski. I'm in charge of community development. We do the planning and building services for the city, and we also do a lot of other permitting work, such as public event permits. But our primary mission, if you will, is building and planning. We have two separate funds to look at tonight. The first one is planning, which is a general revenue fund. It's number 126. I think that's on page 30. I just summarized that there's no significant changes in the department. Most of the big planning projects have been completed. We are working with ODOT on a project to update our TSP, but ODOT is funding the project in its entirety, so staff will just basically be providing support. We had about a $21,000 increase. Most of that, if not all of it, is related to personnel issues in terms of additional pay, benefits, the PERS bonding, I believe, so that combination has increased. Otherwise, we've held the line on materials and services, and we're pretty much in a steady state situation. And with that, do you have any questions on 126? Okay, moving on to the next one is building, which is a special revenue fund, 527, and that's on page 96. Back in fiscal year 12-13, we hired a contract building official, and we've stuck with that individual for the last couple of years, and will do so in the future. We find that it's a very flexible and cost-effective way of running the department. Building goes up, we pay them a little bit more. Building goes down, we don't have to worry about the entire benefit package for that position. Building, as you can see, remains relatively strong in the community. The April year-to-date numbers, which I just got, the fees and values versus the comparables to last year, we've exceeded them greatly. Last year at this time, we had 21 million for the fiscal year. I think right now it's like 32 million in valuation. So we are certainly moving along. We anticipate 4 or 5 major projects coming down the road next year. So I expect to maintain a relative revenue stream, although I, again, try to be conservative. I like surprises to be small and happy ones. The major change for our budget, material and services, the contractor is increasing the hourly rate from $81 to $88. I have no issue with that. That is the first increase in about 13 years. And going through the compounding interest, it's less than 1% a year. If you sort of compound it, so I think that's reasonable. Everything else has to do with, again, increases relative to salary and benefits. I think you will notice a significant carryover or I should say beginning fund balance of about $145,000. So in other words, we've been able to carry this forward. I expect that to actually be a little bit higher. Again, our numbers, we tend to be conservative. Other than that, again, as a special revenue fund, it's basically self-supporting, and so far we're doing okay. And so, any questions on 527?
Approximately how many hours does this contract employee work?
Can be anywhere from 20 to 25. The last bill was, for the month, was about close to 80 hours, maybe 85. So it averages around 20. A slow period might be 10 to 15. Other times he actually spends a Saturday doing a little extra work.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Walt.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next is finance.
I'm back. The finance department has the finance, and last year we moved municipal courts up underneath the finance department. And then I'm also going to talk about the URDs and the debt service. Finance department is located on page 37. The biggest change here is a couple of years ago during that year, we lost an employee. So this year, we're bringing back an employee, but we're going to be splitting it with the court. So it's like part our finance department, part over in the courts. Because right now, we have two ladies, and I'm going to kind of combine this. We have two ladies in the court who right now, they can't go on vacation because we can't leave one lady there on court day by herself, and so there's a lot of issues down there. So we're going to get a part-time there, so if somebody's gone on court day or is sick on a court day, they don't have to come in because we have to have the two people there on court day. So that's what that employee is going to be used for. Other than that, the finance department is pretty steady. Like I said, most of it is, the difference in salary increases. There's not much in materials and services that has changed. So any questions on the finance department? It's pretty simple.
When the reduction occurred, was that position split out of the courts as well as finance?
No, back when we reduced it, we actually reduced a half-time from the court and a full-time from finance. And so now we're bringing back one to kind of help with both. So we're still down, between the two departments, we're still down to half from where we were back in the year. The year.
You have to say the.
The year. So, court starts on page 49. This is one of those departments that I was telling you went up a little bit higher than the 3%. I think it's been underfunded in the last couple of years. We have the contract with the municipal judge in here. We've had a kind of an increase in what do we call outside attorneys, when people are appointed attorneys. That's been underfunded in the past years, or we came in way over that. So we're projecting a little bit more for outside attorneys, not Trey's office. They do all of our side. This is when you come in and we have to appoint an attorney for you. So we've had an increase in that side. So
I have been to court a lot lately.
A lot over here.
Sorry about that, guys.
Do we get any revenue from the state to offset that, or is that entirely out of our?
Actually, no. Actually, we pay the state every month because every fine that we get, it gets split up into about, I want to say like 10 different places, and we send a little bit of all fines to everybody.
No, I'm talking about the attorneys.
No.
We don't get any revenue.
We get nothing from them.
Aside for that.
Nope. We do, some of it we do collect back, because we'll charge the individual for attorneys. It could be added into some of their fees, but a lot of it we don't get back.
Yeah.
So like I said, this is one of those ones that went up a little bit more than 3% because there was some unusual things like that happened. Any questions on the court? You can see from their charts here that the number of cases they're handling is kind of going up quite a bit, so. The other fund I need to talk about is the non-fund. It's a non-departmental fund. As Gary mentioned, this is one that we put things that kind of apply to everybody. We put the general fund insurance there, the general fund water bill there. We don't split it out between all the different places. It's paid here. So there's a lot of things we put in one place. Dues and fees, when we pay Council of Governments or all these organizations, League of Oregon Cities, it all comes here. We don't split it up into across all the funds. We pay it one place for the city. It's on page
56.
57. So this is things that cover everybody. This is also where we have our contingency numbers is in here, and our transfers out to some of the other funds are here. So that's kind of, again, there's really not a lot of big changes here. We do have 3 city grants that we've budgeted here. Let me think this thing. It's $4,000 for Meals on Wheels, $9,000 for the bus system. Or $7,000?
$71.89.
There was one more.
Boys and Girls Club.
Boys and Girls Club. Yes, we have some money for the Boys and Girls Club, $5,000. So that's in the city grant number.
The contract that we have with the chamber, that's not in this?
No, that's back in Department 510, Fund 510.
I think it would be appropriate to comment when we're talking about what this budget does with respect to staffing is either now or when we get to that discussion, to acknowledge that there's actually a staff person being added to the chamber as a result of increased contract there. So into the community, there's an additional investment.
That's correct. And I'll expand on that for the Budget Committee members who weren't here for the discussion on the motel tax. Because of the addition of the Boulder Falls Inn, we are anticipating a threefold increase in our transient room tax revenues. With that money, part of it through the plan approved by the City Council is to increase the visitor center hours so that we can be open on Saturdays, which necessitated the chamber to expand a part-time job to a full-time job. So I think it was half or three-quarter time job going to full-time. And then while we're on the subject, we're also setting up a what we're calling a visitor improvement program fund, which is a fund where about half of the transit room tax we put in there for capital needs and projects related to our visitor industry. So there may be projects with parks or with some sort of improvements downtown that improve our ability to have appeal to the outside world and attract folks to come here, that will be using that fund in the future. So that, again, is another capital capacity that we're building to address some of our needs. So that's all positive. It's all part of growth and some of the prosperity it brings to us.
But we can't attribute that employee to the city because it's a contract service, so it's...
It's contract service, yeah. We want to be clear about that. It's not a city employee.
No, it's not a city employee, but I was just suggesting, as far as investment in the community and adding employment, this budget is adding additional outside city staff into the community.
Yes, that's true.
Could you turn your microphone on? I think when people see it later, it makes it a lot easier to hear on the...
Thanks.
Thank you.
So the other fund that Gary was mentioning is Fund 559, the VIP fund. And this year, we're budgeting to move like $82,000 in there. And that's from our motel tax. And that'll be, and that's there to be determined once we finish the visioning process, how we're going to spend it.
What's great about that is it's not any of us paying in that money. That's people who come and visit us, going to the hotel. They're putting money through the tax into this fund that we can then use for capital improvements to attract yet more folks.
Yeah.
So this is not tax me, not tax you, it's tax the guy who's coming to visit us. So it's a good thing for all of us.
OPM, other people's money.
Yep.
So in the other three that I have here are the URDs, which Gary's already mentioned a number of the projects we have going on there. So we're kind of, so there's not a lot there. A lot of what we've done here, we didn't budget for any contingency in the URDs. Everything is under, if we're not budgeting for a certain item, it's in for improvements, okay, because we've got something going on, like the airport road extension, Oak Street, you know, we want to pay back that one, getting ready for a bond for the airport road extension. And like I told Gary, if something were to happen and the airport road extension doesn't happen, then we're probably not going to pay him in full, because we'll hold that money until we need it. But we're budgeting it with the excitement that things are going to happen. Exciting things, this budget's got some exciting stuff in it.
Is there a reason for the URDs that we don't have any contingency?
Because if we put something in contingency, then it's basically, we can't spend it. And so right now, we're saying we have a need to spend it. So.
In the URDs.
And so, yeah, if we put it in the contingency, Oregon only allows you to spend so much, and it's a process to get back if something were to happen. So the way we work with the engineers and them is we put it all, whatever's left over, we kind of put it in improvements. If we don't use it, that's kind of our contingency. It sits there. But if we need it, something comes up, we've got it there.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, when we get down past the general fund, get into the URDs, that's kind of our explanation of the URDs. There's not a lot more explanation when we get down to that part of the program. So if you have any questions on URDs, we can talk about those now on all three of them. All three are the same way. We have certain things going on in all of them. I budgeted a lot of extra money in the Northgate URD because of all the infrastructure going in out there at the hospital site. When you drive out there on those nice roads, we're paying for those, and some pipes in the ground. So, which is exciting, but I'm budgeting extra for the debt we owe them. So.
Are there any other projects that are going on that are of note? You mentioned the airport road, the improvement in the Northgate.
If you go with airport, we got there. If you go into the URDs, not our projects, but the hospitals putting in the new transportation buildings this year. They're putting in the nurses' college, supposed to be starting to build this year. They're putting another medical building in this year. When Walt says a lot going on, there's a lot going on down there. When he talks about big projects, they're over in a lot of them are in the URDs.
Okay.
Did you mention Oak Street, too?
Yeah, Oak Street, and then.
Oak Street, you're talking about the bridge?
Well, we're talking about most of the length of Oak Street.
Yeah.
In fact, you might all hate the city by the end of the summer.
You're going to get a lot of phone
Because
calls.
there's going to be some inconvenience with that project. So I'm putting you on notice. But when we're done, we're going to have a beautiful street it'll be completely overlaid. It's going to look and feel like a new street because most of it will be.
Are we missing any projects we're going out there? Those are the big ones, right?
Pain in the ass for a while.
So those are our big ones.
And how far out on Oak Street does that go?
Pardon me?
How far out?
Ron, what's
Airway.
Airway.
Okay.
Airway to how far the other way? Williams.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
So your phones are going to ring.
Not in my ward.
Thank you, Miss Rebecca.
She's got your number.
So any questions on the URDs?
No. Well, part of it.
All right. Oh, debt service. Again, there's no change to that. We haven't issued any more new debt, so we're basically carrying on what we've done. We are looking at issuing some debt for the airport road extension, and then over the next couple of years, we're looking at another debt for the water plant. Actually, I think at the next council meeting, we have some debt for the water plant, which is some cheap money coming through from the state we're trying to get.
Yeah. I want to be clear with everyone. I don't want the expectation that we're doing the airport road extension with this new budget.
No.
That's the next year.
Yeah, we're just getting ready for it.
We're preparing that fund so we can do it
Yeah.
by paying off that other debt.
Right.
Yeah, but that's 2 years out.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, if something were to happen and it doesn't happen, then I wouldn't use that and pay it off in full. I'm just trying to be ready to issue the new debt, so when the bond folks look at it, they'll say, whoa, no problem. That's what I'm kind of preparing for. But yeah, we're still a ways before we sign the paperwork on that one. So that's everything. If there's no questions?
Okay, thank you, Dean. I'm getting the high sign here that we've been here for about an hour and a half, and a few folks would like to take about a 10-minute, get some fresh air and use facilities. So let's come back at 10 after and push on through. Okay. Let's move on. Next would be legislative. Linda.
Okay, the legislative budget is on pages 38 and 39. So I'll just touch on three highlights that are being proposed for next fiscal year. The first being we're proposing that we add back a part-time administrative assistant position to assist with council meetings and liquor licensing and records management, thereby reducing contract services by $11,500. And then we also propose adding $4,000 for maintenance and equipment for the Santiam travel station. We need some upgrades, and so that's pretty much it. The rest is real close to last year. Any questions?
On that FTE, is that basically the person you have working right now? And then that would be...
Donna.
Yeah, correct. I couldn't remember. And that would then be moved into a full-time? Okay.
Full-time, not full-time, a permanent part-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Three-quarter. Okay.
No.
Looks good.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next would be library services.
The library budget starts on page 40, I understand. The only significant change is the adding back one FTE, one full-time position, and that will allow us more hours to be open. And the goal is to add back Mondays, to not be closed on Mondays. And then, other than that, the only increases really are increases in some of our fixed costs. And, nothing really significant, nothing interesting, let's just put it that way. It's things like some of our maintenance costs and things are going up and so forth.
So how many hours will that add back then?
We anticipate we'll be able to add 8 hours of being open to the public. So that puts us at, I believe, 40 hours. For next year, we're at 32 right now, I believe.
Any other questions?
Did you have any IT projects or anything this year, or is that going to be pretty much finished on this budget?
IT is never finished.
I do know that. Yes, I do know that.
That is ongoing. And we are working with Brent and the IS staff to put together a long-range strategic plan on that. Right for this split second, everything is operational and so forth, but our technology equipment, anybody's technology equipment, has a shockingly short lifespan. 3 to 4 years is about average. So just when we think we've got everything just as it's supposed to be, something else is going south. One of our, right now we have just ordered a new head. It's the face and brains for one of our self-check machines. We're actually going to reduce to one self-checkout machine for next year. We believe that's probably adequate. The yearly maintenance on these and so forth is very, very expensive, so that will reduce that ongoing cost quite significantly. And it has simply by far reached the end of its lifespan. Among other things, it's still running on Windows XP, which absolutely has to end. So,
Do you have, we guys this year get credit card processing? Do you have that now?
yes, we do.
Good,
Yes,
good.
yes. That has been in effect since this fall.
Is it being used well?
Yes, it is, increasingly so, and particularly for out-of-city cards, which, $50, I don't carry $50 in my purse, and things like that. Yes, it is getting used.
Thank you.
How is the use of the conference room across the hallway? I know when the library was first built, they were talking about having the community being able to rent it and use it. Is it being utilized?
Oh, a lot, yes, yes. Almost every day. Sometimes it's, it's a library function or a city function, but much of the time it is used for community meetings. Just in the last week, we had a celebration of life, a funeral service. We have bridal showers. We have family parties, all kinds of things. Yeah, a lot of civic meetings and things like that are held there too.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Carol. All right, next is Police Department.
You're good.
Good evening. Some significant highlights for the police department. One includes we're proposing to add one FTE communication specialist, which will bring our dispatchers up from 6 to a total of 7, which will increase our double coverage in dispatch center. Currently, basically, we only have one dispatch working per shift, and they're quite honestly becoming overwhelmed and with all the additional tasks and so forth. For our materials and services, it's pretty much remained the same. We increased a little bit over a few things, and that's just comes with increasing costs of ammunition and so forth. That's pretty much it on the police side of things, unless you guys have any additional questions for me. I haven't gotten to that yet. Oh, yeah, and we did increase our part-time school resource officer to a full-time school resource officer. 75% of that cost is coming from the school district itself, and we pick up the additional cost on that. So he'll be spending a majority of his time in the schools when school is in session. Obviously, when school isn't, he comes right back to the road and is an extra patrol officer working the same shift on day shift. So.
Chief, what is your full-time status right now of officers? I know you just lost one. Are you one down?
We are currently 3 down.
3 down.
But yeah, one we just lost. We just opened up that recruitment yesterday. So.
All of those vacancies in the patrol units or in your management center?
Correct. It's in the patrol units. Any other questions?
None for me.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, next will be Senior Services.
Good evening. I'll just go over the highlights that we have for the senior center in the dial-a-bus. Senior center is on page 54. The biggest change there for the senior center fund is that the activities coordinator is in the budget at full-time. That position also provides coverage for the senior center front counter and for the dial-a-bus dispatcher and scheduler. Our materials and services are pretty much the same with just some slight increases for utilities and such. As far as the dial-a-bus fund goes, which is on page 124, the biggest changes that we'll see there is we're receiving some additional grant funds. We're receiving approximately $15,000 for some cameras and some GPS equipment for our dial-a-bus fleet. That will provide some safety and security for our drivers and our riders, and also create some efficiencies for dispatching because we'll know where the buses are and who's on what end of town. We're also receiving an additional $12,000 for the next fiscal year and $15,000 for the year after that. And that will help us provide some more hours of service on the road, and our thought is to provide a loop service. This is something that we used to have in place maybe 1998 to 2002 or so. I wasn't the director out there at that time, but it worked very well. We will go through a public input process, but the idea is that we'd be out at the hospital campus, then stopping at Brookdale and the Oaks and the other living facilities, Walmart, and then back through town. There are several rides that we can't provide each day. They're same-day requests, which we really ask people to call 24 hours in advance, but that will just help create some more efficiencies, and we'll probably see some more rides as well. The other change in the dial bus fund is that our dispatcher and scheduler is going to be at .8, and with the activities position going up to full-time from half-time position, they'll provide a little bit more coverage up front. And in our Fund 835, which is our trust fund, there really are no changes in that fund. Do you have any questions?
To back up just a second.
Yes.
How are you coming on renting out the building?
It is about the same as it's been the past 2 years. We do have a church group, King's Chapel, that uses the building Thursday evenings, then every Saturday and every Sunday. They actually purchased the building that used to be Mrs. B's and the outdoor equipment store. So they're doing some remodeling, and I think that they'll be able to move in at least by fall. That's their hope. So usage will go down a bit. However, with them using it on a regular basis, there are some other requests that we haven't been able to do, weddings, things of that nature.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question on that loop, I like that idea. Would that be where someone would be maybe close to the Oaks and they would be able to get over to the Oaks, they could get a ride? Would they still have to make appointments, or would it just be whoever's there would get a ride?
Well, the idea would be that, and there are some different options that we're looking at, and it depends on how much money we have, and I'll be working with ODOT, again, going through the public input process, and the idea would be, okay, we know at 10 a.m., 11 a.m., noon, and 1, we know that the bus is going to be at the Oaks, either, dropping people off, picking people up. We will still have the dial bus, which is a demand response system, so we'll still have that out there as well, to get to other places other than where we're stopping.
Sounds like that fixed loop would be really beneficial.
It would be, but, the reason that we've had some hesitation in the past is because you start a service, you definitely don't want to have to pull it back in a year. People are just getting used to it. You're working out some kinks. So I think that we're ready.
Why did it stop?
Back in, I think, 2002, 2003, there were some budget cuts, and there were 2 dial-a-bus drivers, and they had to cut one of the positions.
How many buses do we have?
We have 4 in our fleet. One is the van, one is a backup bus, and the other 2 are 2009 vehicles. We're going to be replacing one the next biennium, and the other one the biennium after that.
Okay.
STF funding.
I'm sorry?
With STF funding.
Yes, special transportation funds, yes.
Is the dial-a-bus open to the whole public, or?
It is, and that's something that a lot of the community isn't aware of.
Right.
It's open to the general public at all times. We provide 90% of our rides to those that are seniors or disabled, and 5% is general public, which is 59 years or younger, but it's open to everyone on a first-come, first-served basis.
You're done.
Oh, you don't qualify, Rebecca? Sorry.
She's pretty general public.
Our services at the senior center are available to anyone 50 years and older. I know that you're not there yet. I'm just letting you know. I'm just putting it out there.
He's closer than you'd think.
Drop the mic.
Wouldn't read Facebook today if I were you.
This is where you take your shoe off.
I've got it. Let's move on, past the senior center at this point.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you, Kendra.
All right, thank you. Next would be information services.
Hello. So I have two funds. They are the 540 GIS fund and the 542 IT fund. Right. 102 is 540. That's the one that starts on. Really, the only changes of any significance, we kept our materials and expenses fairly even. It's salary costs that make up the bulk of the changes in that fund. Other than that, we pretty much carried the cost forward from that fund. In 542, which starts on page 104, same thing. Salary expenses is really where the increases came in that fund. I made some line item adjustments between line items, but for all intents and purposes, we're really carrying on with just keeping the computer systems up and running and trying to replace equipment as it goes obsolete. So, any questions? All right, thank you.
Brett, wait.
Oh.
I just caught
Almost made it, Paul.
I was just looking through your notes here. On the upgraded Windows platforms, are you still sticking with Windows 7 for everybody? Is that kind of the goal going forward, or?
We've actually started pushing a little bit. We have some Windows 8.1, and I'm really interested in taking some of our people directly to Windows 10 when it comes out this summer. So, like this computer right here is still a Windows XP. We've got like 2 or 3 of them floating around.
Sure.
But the biggest thing I'm kind of looking at is getting rid of our Windows 2003 servers. So that's going to be in the next couple months. And I think we're going to make it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've like Windows 10. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than 8.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I know.
2 FTE?
Yes, and we are very busy. I have 2 people working for me. So in the department, there's 3. That is correct. But I hope not. I hope not. All right.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Next will be Utility Enterprise Fund. Ron?
Chair got stuck. Thank you, members of the Budget Committee. We've got several different funds here to go through. I'm going to kind of combine, if that's okay with everybody, the utility funds and hit the highlights from them. You'll know whether it's storm drainage, water, or wastewater. I think probably some of the biggest highlights this year, the city council has approved a 2.8% inflationary rate increase for this next year. That's just to keep up with pace of inflation. So that's relevant for all 3 funds, both your water fund, your storm drainage fund, and also your sanitary sewer fund. Some of the other bigger things this year, we've got about $3.1 million sitting in our capital account for water. I would say that 95% of that is going towards our water treatment plant as it goes through its process to get to construction. That money will be used as cash match for some of our loan stuff. It'll be used for design. And as we continue to move on down the road, dollars will continue to accrue there that we'll be using, and the more money that we can use in cash, the less bond we have, the less debt service, so it works out well. With the rest of the money in the capital, we'll usually do a small water line. This year we did Vine Street water line replacement. Our maintenance crews did that this year. Another highlight in the water fund this year, CH2M Hill runs our water treatment plant, our existing water plant. For that, we have about $623,000 allocated to run that treatment plant. Of that $623,000, we have money allocated for the city of Albany for our canal operations and maintenance. We don't know what that number is going to be yet. So we're going through that process. That number based on some of the information that we've got early, is a substantial increase from the years before, and we would have to come back to city council, I assume, at that point and reallocate some money. The money's there, but for all intents and purposes, it's in there.
Can I ask you a general question about that?
Go ahead.
So if since we don't know kind of what that's going to be, that's just part of the contingency? Or if there has to be?
It would actually be out of the water fund. So if you go back to the 3.1 million that we have set aside in the capital fund, likely so that you don't impact any other of the things that we do within that fund, you would take that out of your capital reserve fund.
Okay.
So it could be upwards of $200,000-300,000 that you'd have to put there on a yearly basis. We just don't know the answer to that yet, and we may not know for a while. So
Since you have your own capital reserve fund in the water, then it's within the department sort of covered. You don't have to put it anywhere else.
Correct.
Okay.
There's no borrowing from the general fund or anything like that would go on. No.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Ron?
Go ahead.
Back on your important highlights, that fourth bullet down, that the staff has begun setting funds aside, $50,000 into equipment replacement for the new water treatment plant.
Correct.
I just want to thank you, because that is something that we need, and that is an important, and when I say what we need is planning, that we're putting money aside now, so that you said in 10 to 15 years, there would have to be a rate increase to be able to pay for that, and I appreciate
that's our
that
goal.
foresight.
We're putting $50,000 away, and we'll know what that number should be a little bit better here in the next 2 years. Jason and I got together and thought, well, let's start out with something, and we'll do that, because the filter replacements for the new treatment plant is going to require, every 10, 12 years, you're going to have to replace that, and hopefully that can be done on a cash basis as opposed to doing something else.
It's good planning, thank you.
Any more questions on the water fund? Okay, storm drainage, that's Fund 450. Really, it also had the 2.8% inflationary increase. This fund is primarily used for cleaning, televising, and minor maintenance. It generates a little over $400,000 a year, so there's not really a lot of things that you can do. We've managed to save some money over the last few years, and we're able to do some small projects. This year, we're going to, along with the airport road possibilities, you'll see that we've got River Road, Russell Drive, storm drainage improvements in there. That all ties in if we actually do that project. We might start looking if we can break our crews free at the next phase of Cedar Drive storm drainage improvements. We started that last year, and that's down off South Main. We're doing that as we have time and funds available to improve the storm drainage down there, and then hopefully someday replace that street down there. It's in pretty tough shape, so one of the things we're working on. And that's really it in the storm drainage fund. I mean, it's a pretty small fund, and most of it, like I said, is done for just mainly maintenance. Any questions on that? Okay. Wastewater. And as Dean alluded to earlier tonight, we've combined all these now, so there's one water fund, one wastewater fund, so it actually makes it nice for us too. Wastewater, again, 2.8% inflationary rate increase. Major capital projects going on this year. We're going to replace the effluent pump station out at the wastewater treatment plant. That project's actually underway. We also take money and we do a small sewer replacement every year. We're finding more and more and more small sewers and neighborhood sewers that are failing, basically due to the age. So far, we're able to keep up. I think this year, one important highlight, we will probably spend, this will be a record year for lateral replacements. Projecting will be about $140,000 in lateral replacements. We'll use
How much
every
didn't we start off with like $25,000 a year when we started that?
Like originally it was about $50,000 and it stayed pretty steady, but of course by word of mouth and by just the age of the infrastructure, we're starting to see a real uptick in that. And it's a great program. It really helps the homeowners out, and so.
And with 140, do you think by the end of the year, are you out of money this year?
No, if you remember, we came back to council, was it March, for a budget amendment. We actually didn't spend all the money in that fund from last year. We had a bigger carry forward of, I think it was 60 some odd thousand. So we had budgeted 80, and we're real close by the time we're done to spending that 140,000. So it's been a good program, but as they continue to come up, we're going to see more and more of that. So there's that. Then again, CH2M Hill operates our wastewater plant. Operations, maintenance, and environmental issues associated with wastewater runs us about $1.226 million a year. I should note that CH2M Hill has given us their contract amendment for this year, and they're only proposing to increase 1.5%. So we're pretty comfortable with that. And then the remaining funds will go towards the West Side Interceptor. We'll continue on that project. As we have some of our staff available, we'll start the design phase on that and hope to get to it by 2016. It just depends on how much other stuff comes up and takes its priority. So with that, I can answer any questions about the utility funds.
No questions?
All right.
All right, thank you, Ron.
Do I have more? I think I do. I think I've got all the...
capital projects.
Yeah, SDCs. A couple other funds, Fund 550 and 571. Those are state foot and bike path and surface transportation funds. That's the yearly money we get from the state. The foot and bike path funds will be spent on sidewalk access ramps this year on 5th Street south of Oak Street, down past the high school, and hopefully get that area picked up. We get about $8,000 a year, and we've managed to save for the last 4 or 5 years, so we'll do that. And then 571 is our surface transportation funds. Get roughly $180,000, $170,000 a year, and the state hangs on to that for us, and we utilize that once we have a big project that we can, make it count instead of just spending the $170,000 a year. We try and combine it with something else. This year, we're probably going to use a couple $100,000 of it towards the Oak Street project to finish that along with the URD. And then any projects that come up that, utility projects, Vine Street's a good example of that, where we have street failures. That gives us a source of funding to go in and at least repair the street, if not replace it. So those are those two. That's Fund 550 and 571. And then I think the rest that I had is the 800 funds. And really, there's not a whole lot to talk about on those. There's a lot of capital there. I'm not sure, and the only one that I'm real familiar with is Fund 840, which is a street preservation fund, which still has the $310,000 worth of Airway Road money set aside for when we do Airway Road, and then it's got a little bit of money, about $49,000 for improvements, and most of that's going to our bridge rehab projects that we're trying to fix our bridges due to canal flows. Basically, we're seeing a lot of scour on our bridges right now, so we're trying to mitigate that as best we can with what little we have there.
You're keeping very close track of how much that's costing us.
Oh, yes. The Oak Street Bridge will cost us about $111,000 to $120,000. So for that one particular bridge. And then you get into the SDCs. Unless everybody wants me to, I won't go through the SDC funds individually, but Rebecca, you would like me to?
But I'd like you to go pretty detailed through them.
Line by line,
Okay.
with long explanation.
So SDC, System Development Charges, that's on anything new. Basically, it's used for growth, for future growth. That's what developers pay. A lot of this money is hard to use. Wastewater, majority of the wastewater money that we're using, that we're saving for goes to the West Side Interceptor. Water, obviously, any water SDC we get right now, our treatment plant's 45% eligible, so at a $20 to $25 million project, we can use all of it we can get. So streets is probably the hardest one to use because it's a growth allocation, and it's really hard. There's not a lot, but it has a huge balance. It's very tempting to use, but it's very limited in what you can use it for. So, and then storm drainage is kind of the same way. Parks is similar. It's got to be in the master plan and what we use it for. We've been able to use for trails. We're able to leverage about 30% parks SDCs for trails. That's eligible for that. So it helps us substantially on these grants. With that, that's kind of SDCs in a nutshell. I mean, there's really no big projects scheduled out of them this year. It's just they continue to carry, they continue to build, and they continue to generate interest at some obscenely low percentage, but they do generate some interest. So I can answer any questions about any capital or anything that you got.
Did you move that money offshore again and get a little better return on it?
I do have a question on the SDC.
Okay.
We haven't had a meeting or a new committee and a review. Those people, I can't think of their names now, from Portland that came down and they worked with us. Is there another need to have that? It used to be like we were doing it every 4 years or something. That
we just implemented the last phase. So that last phase, I want to say it was it 7 years? Yeah, okay, so it was a 7-year phase in. So we just entered the last phase. So it's due for some updates. As your master plans update, you need to update your SDCs so that you can spend your SDC money on your master plan projects. So it'll be due here in the next few years.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks.
All right.
All right, Jason with maintenance.
Good evening. I'll be speaking about Fund 100-133, which is a Parks Fund. It's on page 35. The only real change we'll see in this fund, there's a little bit of an increase, but it's mainly just catching up materials and services and equipment acquisition. It's holding pretty steady. Any questions on that fund? Next one I'll speak about is our Parks Grant Fund on page 101. This fiscal year, City Council authorized staff to apply for 3 parks grants. One Oregon State Marine Board grant, which would supply a flushable, ADA accessible restroom to Cheeto Lake. That grant, we've asked for $48,600, and we're prepared to match that with $49,400 of in-kind services in our grant match and STCs, and Ron's utilities that he's going to extend for our water treatment plant. We have a really good chance to get that grant just because we have such a high level of match. So we're in a great position there. Our second grant is made possible because this group elected to start a fund to start replacing park structures that were failing, think, two budget cycles ago. Put $50,000 aside out of contingencies. We were able to do that again in this budget, so now we've got 100,000. We're going to leverage 50,000 of that for River Park in this grant, which the total project cost for our River Park grant is $340,000. And out of that, we're only asking for $165,000. So for the grant to replace the restroom, the shelter, to build a trail across the property there, we have a 51% match, which really ups our scoring criteria for that grant. So the forward thinking really helps us with that. The third grant that we've applied for is a small government grant through Oregon Parks and Recreation. This grant actually was made possible due to a donation by the McDaniels, Jim and Heather McDaniel family, or the McDaniel family. Their cash donation to develop a baseball field at Christopher Columbus Park. We're able to leverage that cash donation against our project at Christopher Columbus with the use of SCCs and our in-kind labor and equipment that the city has, to ask for $135,000, $134,500. And of that, we're only asking for $47,500. And with that grant, we would replace all the old 1980s playground equipment. We would put in a restroom and then develop the ball field along with access trails across the backside of the property. So.
And you're working with BLT on that one, right?
Yeah, they're helping for all trail aspects of the grants. Absolutely. So I'm really optimistic about all three of those applications this year. Should be a busy year for us. So, any questions about any of those? This is the joy of going last, right here. The next fund is our street maintenance fund, and it's on page 115. This fund is our money received from the state through gas tax, our percentage of the state's gas tax. Its revenue has climbed just a little bit, we project, not very much. It's held pretty steady. We actually saved a little bit to do a project. Our revenue's so limited in streets, we'll kind of bottle up a little money for a few years in a row to help with a project we'll do in-house, a street rehab project. We'll work with Ron on picking some of those out. So this is one of our down years. We spent our money last year, so it's just kind of going to be a maintenance as usual year this year. We won't have any projects other than what comes out of our STP plan. So other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Jason, how hampered are we? I mean, in this highlight bullet here, can you kind of expand on that a little bit? And
the eliminating the $150,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, historically, we've had a transfer. I like to put that in there just to gouge Dean every year. That's generally in there. Historically, we've had a transfer from...
Before I got it.
But it's not going to go away. That will be in here every year moving forward. But historically, we've had a transfer of $150,000 that we would get from franchise fees to offset streetlights and traffic signal power costs. When the general fund had some issues, that money went away. And so I just like to point that out every single time.
Draw for hire card on that one?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or discussions about anything that we've heard? Do I have a motion for approval of the budget?
As amended? Did Dean use the motion?
There's that one on,
Yeah, because we did that 10,000 to 25,000 change.
Yeah.
So you need to do it as amended.
So that this needs to be read verbatim. I'd like to read something I move that the City of Lebanon Budget Committee approve taxes?
The taxes are there, too.
Taxes for the 2015-2016 fiscal year at the rate of, are we discussing that? At the rate of 5.1364 per thousand of assessed value for operating purposes, and in the amount of 1.427741 for payment of bond principal and interest, and forward the approved budget as amended to City Council.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed?
You need a motion also to approve the budget.
No, that is what, we just need to move it on to the city council.
And forward the approved budget as amended to City Council.
The city
so that we.
Okay, then what's the need for item number 12 on the agenda?
This is for the budget committee.
This one takes care of it.
Let's eliminate that next year.
I'm just doing what I'm told. Okay.
I just wrote the motion to take care of most stuff.
Okay. All right, we adjourn as the Lebanon Budget Committee and convene as the Lebanon Urban Renewal Agency's Budget Committee. And we have the FY16 Northwest URD budget presentation by the City Manager and Finance Director.
I covered a lot of that under my presentation, so if there are any further questions, I'll be happy to answer those, either that or Dean.
Are there no other questions? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the Northwest URD budget?
I move that the Northwest Lebanon URD Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee approve taxes for the 2015-16 fiscal year of 100% of the amount from the Division of Tax and forward the approved budget as amended to the City Council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Let's see.
These next ones, we don't need the other than, we didn't amend anything.
I like to be thorough, Dean.
Okay, the FY16 Cheetah Lake URD budget presentation by the City Manager and the Finance Director.
Been there, done that. If you have questions,
Got the mug
I'll reply.
t-shirt.
Yep.
Yep, okay. Are there any questions? Okay, good. Do I have a motion for approval of the FY16 Cheetah Lake URD budget?
I move.
Oh, everybody's like, oh, let's go.
We
Just
want
get
out
this-
of here.
Second.
I move that the Cheetah Lake Urban Agency Budget Committee approve taxes for the 2015-16 fiscal year of 100% of the amount from the Division of Tax and forward the approved budget as, to the City Council.
Seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, FY16 North Gateway URD budget presentation by the same folks.
Are there any questions?
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I move that the Lebanon Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee approve taxes for the 2015-2016 fiscal year of 100% of the amount from the Division of Tax and forward the approved budget as amended to the City Council.
All those in favor? Oh, wait a minute, we need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Then that passes. See, I do learn how to move quickly.
You're doing good.
Okay, then I move that this budget council meeting is adjourned.